start recording. I hope it's aita overwrite ile ingine. Yeah. So now how do we include, because now we have a header here that returns HTML. How do you think we can, and have the header here? So if we console log header, it's a function, so I can call it console. So when I call this function header with that, you'll see that what I'm getting HTML for that, for the header part. Let me see kama tutapata now. You see now we have the header, which is basically a HTML, right? So this HTML, we can embed it into the body section by doing what? We can just say document.body let's say just inner HTML will be equals to header, right? So because header gives us a HTML string, right? So we can just use that as the header. So now this is the template. The template, whenever we want to place a header, we can always call the template, this particular template. So that gives us the header, but now it removes main. As you can see, we don't have main, so we can just create main dynamically upper chain. We can just say main is going to be document.create element instead of query selector create element, because when I do, it means that I will overwrite everything, right? I'm saying inner HTML is the content that is inside the body. It's everything that is between the HTML body, including the script, right? So the best way, yes, Ryan.
Why can't you also say document dot create element for the header kama vile tumefanya for main?
Yeah, so again, with these things, there are many ways to deal with this, right? There are so many ways of handling this, because we can still create this header dynamically, but then it will mean that we create all these elements. We have to create header, we have to create h3 ul. No. So we can create header the way that you're saying, header dot create element by create element, and we create header, but then we have also to come and create h3 ul and li, right? So to shorten all that, we just return the string. Okay, so the other alternative is the example I had given you guys when we were starting this lesson. We can create a function that creates elements, right? So we can have a function here, and we can put it maybe in a folder called library. And this function, we can say it's an element creator. Let me just call it element creator .js. So this function, we can just call it, let's just export it. Export default function element create. So the purpose of this function is to generate an element, right? So we can, because you see the command for creating element is normally the code. If we are to create an element, we normally use document dot create element, and we usually pass the tag name, it's the tag name of the element that we want to create. As you can see here, it takes in a tag name. So we can say here, so if it's the header that we want to create, we would enter header like that, or yeah, header. But because this function is going to be what we refer to a generic function. When I say generic, what I mean is when I say generic, what I mean is this function is actually, we can use it to create any element that we want, right? So instead of having like the header, we can pass in a tag name. We can pass in a tag name here. So whatever tag name that we pass to this function, it's going to be created. Okay. And then on the second parameter, we can say the attributes. We can add the attributes. So the attributes here are, if you are going to create a header that looks like this, the attributes are the class attribute. If we are going to have an ID attribute. If you are creating the H3, actually all of this, they just have the class attribute. So we can say we are going to have on the element creator, we can have attributes as well for that particular, for the element that we are creating. And then finally, if that element is going to be a header and it contains children, which are basically now the children in between here. If it's going to have children, we can say, you remember the rest operator. So we can say, we can embed as many children as we want. Okay. Or child elements. You can embed as many child elements as we want. Okay. So allow me to just do this so that you can document. Sijui kama itaweza ku document. Yeah. So the tag name is like a header or whatever, or header or H3, and the attributes are the class, maybe class ID is of it. And then if you're going to have children, we can add. So now we can come here and iterate, because this is going to be an object. And by there you can set a default variable, a default value for a parameter. So we can iterate through this object. Who can remind us how we normally iterating an object? How do you iterate an object? Can you guys remember? Object iteration. Now naweza kumbuka how we can iterate an object. We use for in. Yeah, so we can use for in. So we can say for let key, because when we are using for in, it will give us the key. So for in key in attributes. But because I need both the attribute and the value, I think the best one to use is we can use, because I need both the attribute and the value, we can say attribute name. So the attribute name here is, an attribute name is like, in the case of this, an attribute name is the class. So this is an attribute name, and whatever we have here is an attribute value. So we can use, we can extract attribute name and attribute value, and then we use the of, and then from here we can say object dot entries. So this will give us the, so that when we want to add them into the element, we can just basically say element dot set attribute. So we are setting the attribute where we can now pass the attribute name and attribute value. So this is just like a generic function for creating an element. And then once we've added all the attributes, down here we can also add the children, because these children elements, we can add them using append. And when you're doing an append, you can, because they are going to, this is going to be an array, we can spread. We can say spread that. We can spread it like that. Okay, so when you have a function like this, of course now it's going to return the element. It's going to return that element that we have created dynamically. So basically, we're just creating an element, and then the object here is going to be the attributes. We are adding those attributes, and then the child elements, which are going to be embedded within that child, we can embed them using the spread operator, and then we return that element. So when you have a function like this one, we can generate the head element. So instead of doing inner HTML, we can as well now take everything, we can take away everything here and say, so create the header. Const header is going to be, now we call our function element creator. Element creator, where, because now we are going to create this particular because we are going to create the header, we can pass it as a tag name. So we want to create the header. We want this header to have a class, and the class that we want this header to have is whatever we have over here. So I can just copy and paste this. So you can also consider this as a template of an element, right? So I know this might be, so we can add this as an attribute. So we can say we are going to create header, and the attribute for that header are the class. So let's see what this is going to give us. So when you are adding, now instead of using document.body, we can say document.body.append child. Append child. So the child that you are appending is header. The same thing, the same way we can also create main. We can say main equals to, again, element creator, and we create the main element. So using the same function. But now main, if you look at main here, it doesn't have any class. It doesn't have any class. So we can just utilize it. So we can go back to main and create main. So this one doesn't have anything at all. So you can just say we are creating main, and then we add both header and main in the, we can append them in body. We can append them in the body section. So now this way we will get the same effect, but now instead of using the template literal, we are now using just JavaScript to create elements. Yeah, so this way it's a bit simpler, because if you want to embed, if you want to add other elements, like I want to add the H3 and the UL, it's going to be easier because I'm going to add the child nodes. So you remember how this function is expecting a third so let me just break it down like this so that it's a bit more visible. So this function is expecting to have the tag name, attribute, and child nodes. So we can add the child nodes down here. We can call it again and add we can call it again, because this is the one that we are using to create elements. So we can call it again here to generate H3. So again, we can call it here. So we can keep calling this every time we want to create an element. So we'll create a H3 with the same classes. So I can just copy the class for H3. And if this is the class for H3, I can put it, so I can say I'm passing the class and I add it there. And because this h3 contains it contains the title of my website, I can add this title as a child element. I can add it here. So now this becomes a bit more easier, because the only thing that you need to do is to call a function. And this is where functions are very important, because you can use a function many times. So now I'm able to create this. Okay. If I want to add the other two at the end, I'll just pass them as child elements. So I'll include this. I'll just copy and paste this, and then change, because we are using a UL, I can change that to a UL. Basically trying to replicate the same thing that we have here. So this UL has a class column2. So the same thing can be included. So to answer your question, the first question about DOM manipulation, there are two ways. There's this particular one here, generating a template using this, which gives you a HTML string. And so you can use that inner HTML, you can use inner HTML to add that element. So the second way is having a function that generates those elements. And then you can reuse that function anytime you want to create an element, and you can keep embedding those elements kwa DOM. So this is column2. So now, because this element UL contains two other elements, LI, so I can also still include LI. So instead of Moringa, I can come here and add, I call this element again, element creator, and create the LI that contains signing, and the other one that contains registration. See now, registration or register. Now see, so the header, instead of now me returning a string, I'm just using this function to generate my elements, and then I keep calling that function to construct header and add the child elements to the header, continue doing that. So if you look at this function, the way I'm calling it, I'm passing the tag name, the attribute, and then the child elements, right? So if I save that, we have this part complete with everything that was there before. So let's see if it changes. Okay. It's not showing. So are we together up to that point? As in, is that clear now? I can see Francis is saying okay. All right. So let me first of all figure out why am I not seeing this and this? Inspect. So the UL is there, and the LIs are here. Oh, yeah. So I'm passing this. So this one should just be empty attributes, because they don't have any attributes. So I have to put them as empty object. So yeah, so those are the two ways. So when I have something like this, I can actually replace this whole header. I can replace what I had here as a string. The reason I'm doing this is so that I can make these. If someone signs in, I want to be able to change. So let's say, for example, instead of returning a string, I return that whole thing, right? not return, but rather export. I don't know if I'll be able to export it for, yeah. So I can export that whole thing. So this way, actually, let me export it as a function. And the function is header, and return what we have element. Of course, we have to import, because it will give you an error if you don't import it. So this way I can be able to have like an if statement. So let's say, for example, here I have a variable that checks if a user is signed in, right? Is logged in, which is false. So I can probably use a variable like this to check. So in the part where I'm iterating here, I can have an if statement that checks, right? That checks if this person is logged in or not. So maybe that would mean I change maybe this whole thing and use the interpolation. So this particular things that we have been teaching you are really important. So I can use here is logged in to check if a user is logged in. There's something we call a ternary operator. The ternary operator is like an if-else statement. Sujui kama you've read this in the content. You can shorten the if-else statement like this. You can check if it's logged in, you after the question mark you add this. If else, you use this. So in this case, if this person is logged in, if this person is not logged in, we can use you can use these two, sign in and register. You can have those two. So this part checks if the user is logged in. So if the user is logged in, then instead of using the sign in and register, we can change this to sign out. Sign out. At least we can change this to assuming, let's actually say, instead of checking is logged in, we can check yeah, let's just leave it like that. So then here we can maybe place the username, like maybe if the person logged in is NJMOS, we can change. So this particular statement, having a template like this one can give you now the flexibility of having an if-else statement to check if this condition is correct, then do this. If it's not, do the other thing. So in this case, if the user is logged in, we'll display the username and assign the sign out button. Else, we'll display the sign in. So in this case, this user is not logged in. So if I save this and check, I basically see sign in, register. So let's give it time to load. We have sign in and register. But if I switch this boolean from false to true, then it will change the other way around. It's going to now display the username and the password. Sorry, the username and the sign out. Although it's not doing that, I don't know why. Maybe let me just I think it's because of something we call the scope. So instead of putting it here, let me just put it as a variable. So it's logged in is true. So if it is true, then it's going to switch from register and sign in. So it's not doing that. I don't know why. So I'm supposed to see NJMOS signed out. Sign out. Is there like an error? No error. So signed in, display that. So it's defaulting to this. So it's logged in. Equals to true. What if I switch this to false? So it's not working as I expected. Two exclamations from here. Just to see, I want to see if it's going to change. As we wait, is there any question as I try to fix this? Is there any question in regards to what I've talked about, or maybe anything that you did not understand? Anything that you did not understand? Okay, no question. I'll try and debug this later. Try to find out what the issue is, and then later on I'll push this code so you can check it. Element creator function. Yes, Ryan.
I've already the chat. You can just do a recap. Nimeelewa like the nini, the gist ningetaka tu you just take us one last time, just a quick one.
Okay. Oh, I think I know why it's not displaying. It's because I'm not importing this. So in main I'm using a different header. So instead of using this, let me use that. So that is why it wasn't changing. So right now I'm importing a header now. So we should be able to see it changing. We should be able to see that change. So I'm going to recap again. Just a moment. Let me try to sort my. I want to make this UI to look exactly the way I want. So let me remove that and add a class here. So that can actually load the way I expect it here. So now this one is showing NJMOS signed out, and if I switch this to false, when I'm calling that, switch that to false, then it should display sign in and sign out. It's loading a bit slow, but let me just stop some views here. Then it closes a bit too low, so that can run a bit faster. All right. So you're saying recap a bit on the element function. So the element function here is just a normal function. So forget the upper part. This is like a documentation, how you document your function. So forget about that. So what is happening here is I'm just creating this function called element creator, and element creator takes in a tag name. So a tag name, we all know a tag name in HTML. The tag name is actually this over here, right? That is a tag name. And when you're creating an element using JavaScript, when you say document.create element, we normally pass a tag name here, right? So our function takes in a tag name. So we are going to use this tag name to create an element. So whatever tag name we pass here, whether it's main, header, script, image, whatever it is going to create for us that element. Okay. So this kind of like a reusable function. And then the second parameter is the attribute. So for all elements in in HTML, they contain attributes. So you can have an attribute like if I go to this HTML, attributes are anything that comes after the tag name. So like for example, this meta tag, anything that comes after that that contains a key and a value pair, those are the attributes, right? So like for this case, you have an attribute name and view, and this one you have an attribute content. So those attributes are the ones that we are passing here as an object, right? Are we together up to that point? If we are, just respond with a thumbs up there. So we are passing those attributes here as an object. And then the third parameter are the child nodes. So the child nodes are elements that are embedded. So we all know like HTML is a hierarchy. So if this is a header element, everything inside the head element are the child elements. They are the child elements. Like for body, we have script is a child element. So when you pass this children, we are saying we can pass as many child elements as possible. Are we together? If you go and read about the REST operator, which I think we talked about this on Monday. The REST operator takes, we are saying the first two parameters and any other parameter that we pass. So in this case, we are saying any other parameter that we pass after attributes can be a child element. It can be any element that you want to put under the elements that we are creating. So, and normally when you use the REST operator, it gives you an array, right? So this is going to be an array of elements that are going to be embedded inside the elements that we are creating. So as far as the parameters are concerned, are we good up to that point? I've explained what the parameters are. Are we good up to that point? So now inside the function, we create the element, right? So this element we are using document.createElement, which gives which we provide the tag name. So the tag name is whatever we want to pass. And then for the attributes, we are using if you look at this, we talked about destructuring an array on Monday. So you can look, I hope we recorded that session, but in case you want to find out what this is destructuring. So in short, we can actually say, we can put this as attribute like this, where we are saying let attribute of object entries. So object entries, if I go here and create an object, let me just create an object here of a person. I don't know, somehow my browser is a bit slow. I think it's because I'm recording at the same time. That's why it's responding very slow. Or probably I'm running out of space. I'm not sure about that. So if I create an object of a person, so, or maybe let me just create an object of attributes. So the attributes here are, we have an attribute like class, that is flex, and probably I have an ID that is let's say my element, and so on and so forth, right? So if I have that particular attribute, if I say object dot entries and I pass that object, what I'm going to get is an array, right? An array of arrays. So you can see this, there's an array of 0, 1, and the first element in this array contains the attribute name, which is class, and the attribute value. So basically this and this as an array. And then this one as well, we have ID and its value. So when we are looping through this using the for loop, if I say for let attribute of object dot entries, and I pass in that object attributes, attributes. If I console.log attribute, you'll see that let me do a console.log instead. Console.log attribute. So you get that we are getting the individual arrays, which means a tree at any given point of the iteration, it gives us the array that we have, so the class and the flex. So to destructure this, we can destructure this because it's an array. We can destructure it like this. Instead of using a tree, I can say that what we have here is the attribute name and attribute value. Right, so this will give, so the attribute name in this iteration is going to be class. In the second iteration is going to be ID. The same thing with the attribute value. The first iteration is going to be flex. The second iteration itakuwa my element. So having that in mind, if I console.log this again, that and attribute value, so what I'm going to get is class and flex. So that is what this whole line does. Right, so now I'm using the same concept upper. Right, I'm iterating through the object attributes. Or to make this actually even simpler, again we can use what Ryan had given us. So let me just comment this and try and explain the same concept using the for in. So I'll just copy that and paste it here. So again, if you don't understand that, or maybe it's not, you still are not getting it, we can either use the let key in attributes. So this is a bit more simpler to understand. So let key in attributes. So when you say key, this is going to give us, if I use the same loop here, using the same concept, console.log key, you see now the keys are going to be class and ID. Those are the keys. If you look at our object, because our object looks like our object looks like this. So if you are going to do let key in attribute, you are taking in the keys. So in this case, you don't have the value, but still you can get the value by saying, now taking this attribute and passing in the key using the bracket notation. So you say attribute. So this is going to just give you the same effect. You see now the values here, to access the values I'm using that. So I can still use the same concept. So set element, I can say the attribute is key, and then value is going to be attribute key. Right? So still this concept will still work. But the reason why I'm using this one is because now you see when I say set attribute, I'm using the word key here, which it doesn't really make sense, especially when you share this code with someone else. They might ask, why is it that you're setting an attribute? So this particular function, or it expects what? Set attribute expects, if I point it, let me see if it's going to give me, let me use Google instead. HTML, JavaScript. I'm running out of space. That is why my machine is getting slow. Nodes or set attribute. So let me Google this, and I want you to see in the documentation that normally is expected. So for someone who knows their way around JavaScript, they know that when you're setting an attribute, the first argument that you pass is an attribute name. Right? So if you look at this, even this example, tells you that name, you see name, a string specifying the name of the attribute. So they're expecting that your variable should reflect something to do with name and value. So when you say key and then attribute key, it will kind of confuse someone. But when you destructure like this, you say let attribute name, attribute value. And then when you're setting here, it's self-explanatory, even for someone else who is looking at your code. They will understand that you're actually setting an attribute name and an attribute value. But when you put it here like key, attribute key, it will still work. But then if you're collaborating with people, they are like, okay, someone might get confused and they start editing your code because they don't feel like, they feel that this should actually be name and this should be value. It shouldn't be like key and attribute key. But anyway, it still works. So now that is how we pass the attribute, and the attribute, as I explained us, is everything that follows after this, right? And then lastly, we embed the child. So the child nodes, in our case, element creator, the child nodes, because it's an array, we are using the append function or method of the element. So we say the append, you can add as many elements as possible. So because this is it's an array of child nodes, we use the spread operator. Right? So the spread operator will spread all the elements that you provide, right, as child elements. So they are going to be spread there. And then finally, our function is going to output the element itself. So it is going to output that element. So, or return, right? So let's use the right term. It's going to return the element that was created. So now to use this element creator, as we are using it in our main, we are using it, we're actually using it here in the header element, right? So in the header, you can see if I remove this particular area, if I remove that up to there, so these are the first two parameters, the tag name followed by the attribute object, which has a class and that, and then the third argument is a list of elements. So these are the two elements that we are adding there. We are adding H3 and UL, right? So we are adding using the same function, right? So we are using the same function to create. So we call that, and then because UL contained other child nodes, we pass in the first argument, the second argument, and then the third argument is a list of child elements that we want to embed. But now these ones are added conditionally. So we are saying if the user is signed in, then we should just pass the username and sign out button. Else, we can just pass in the sign in and the registration button. Is that now understood, Ryan? Okay, is there anyone else with a question regards to that? Yeah, I am totally out of space now. Wacha tuangalia how much space do I have. This usage. Oh, I have 7 GB available. I know why is it slow. 7 GB anymore. All right, so to just so the other way that we looked at, so you can either decide to build your templates like this, or the simpler way, you can also return the HTML. But if you return HTML string, you have to work with inner HTML. You need to keep replacing inner HTML. Like for example, in this case, where an example with the string interpolation, I have an example here. I'd created the comment. You see like the comment here, the comment part is each and every comment here. So I took everything that is in here and made it a template like this. So it has a div and it contains the user icon, and then the user who is posting and the message that they wrote. Okay, so now this is a template of the comment section, right, of each and every comment that we have here. So once I create it as a template, it accepts only one parameter. It accepts a parameter called comment, which is an object. So if you look at our data, you will see that every feed contains an array of comments like this one, right? It contains an array of comments. So this array of comments, it's an array of objects. So there's the user and the message the user is sending, user and the message, right? So this is the data that we want to. So this particular object is what is passed as a parameter to the comments, right? So this is the comment. So when I'm interpolating the string to just place the right user and the right message. So this is like a template. So how to utilize this? In my main, I'm importing it. Again, I'm importing the comment here. Remember, it's a function. So when I create a new function, if you can remember in the morning we had this submit, and we were submitting, then we are taking the comment from the input. So again, I am creating a new comment where I'm just using a random user and the comment that was added, right? So this is the comment as a message. So down here, because we need to keep track the data, we need to keep track of the data, I have to select the feed. So whatever feed it is, I change the comment, I add the new comment, and then in the feed, so in the comments section, so this the comment section here, which is this area. So if I go to the feed.js, this is where all the comments are. They are in this particular element. So I've given it a class comment, right? So because I want all the new comments to be added inside here, what I'm doing here is I am querying that element. So feed.querySelector comments, and then now I'm using the inner HTML, right? So inner HTML, I am embedding that text. So when I use plus equals, when I put equals, it's going to replace, right? So if I use inner HTML equals, what is going to happen is when I create a post, it will replace the existing comments. So for example, if I come here and I write a new post, right, a new comment, and I submit this new comment, it replaces the existing comments. So to avoid replacing that, I concatenate, string concatenation. Basically, I am adding to the existing string. So when I say plus equals, I am taking the current HTML that is there, and then I'm adding the new comment. So remember now the comment here, this is a template. So when I call this function, I'm basically calling the comment function, this one, right? And then I'm passing in the comment that was created. So the new comment that was created here that contains the user and the message, right? The user and the message. So the user and the message I'm interpolating here. So now whatever this function gives me back is a HTML of the new comment. So I am embedding that new comment into the inner HTML. And then, so the last things here are basically clearing the form and also increasing the number of comments. So this part is just increasing the number of comments and clearing the form. But the main part is here. where instead of replacing the existing HTML, I am adding to the existing, what we call string concatenation, right? So I'm using the same operator for incrementing, plus equals. So now if we try and submit that, we will see that it's going to add to the existing, right? So if I write new comment and I submit, I will get the new comment here. Okay. If I go to the next one, and I believe this will answer the question you had. Someone wanted to share screen. So I think this should answer the question that you had. The legendary football there. Legendary football. If I submit this legendary football, I should be able to see that comment there. So the trick is to that. And you see, and this does not, if I do another post, it's still going to appear because, again, there's a group that actually was using, instead of embedding this, they were recreating the whole UI using feed UI. So if you replace the entire, all the feeds using this function, you'll go and look at this function later. If you replace, it means that it will lose the event listeners. Right? If you replace the whole thing, again it will lose the event listeners. You will have to embed the event listeners again, right? So the best way to do that, to avoid overwriting the event listeners, the best thing to do is to add to the existing. So for example, if we had an event listener, let's say we had an event listener that if I add here, let's say I want to, let's say if I click this user, I want to know who this user is. So if I inspect this, I'll see this element is under inside of let's call it strong. Let's pick it as strong. If I come here to the main and I add an event listener, like let's use let's add it in the feed in between here. So if I say feed dot query selector strong, and I add an event listener to this, let's say it's a click event listener, and let's just put something simple here. Something simple that just says console log clicked. Console log I am clicked. So let's just have something simple as that, right? So for example, if I add that, so that means if I click on this, if I click on any user here, opening the console, if I click on any user, I'll get that, right? You'll see it's taking the first one. So let's use query select all, and for each element we add the event listener. For each element we add the event listener to each element. So let's just put like that. I just know we are adding the click to all this particular element. So let's focus on that. So it means that for all the usernames here, if I click any username, I'm supposed to get I am clicked, right? If I click this one, I'm clicked. If I click the ones below here, I am clicked. So but what happens if I add a new comment? If I come here and add a new comment and say maybe new comment, if I add this new comment, if I try to click on this button, I will not get the same effect, right? So you see this one, actually I've lost the I've actually lost the event. I'm not able to see that event. But for these ones, I will be able to see because I haven't added. So if I clear this and add something else here, I lose the event. So that basically means that, and that's one of the disadvantages actually of using the string interpolation. It means that every time I add a comment, I have to again add the events again. I have to call the same I have to call this again to reinitialize, or maybe to make sure that the event are still there. So when you use in HTML, you lose events. So every time you add an element, you have to add the event again, add the event a second time to maintain that feature. And I think that is enough for now. Nikiendelea zaidi hapa, I think nitaanza kuwapoteza. So if I now add a new comment, I add that, I'm still able to see that, and even the new comment now has the effect. So again, if I click, I'll clear here, and if I paste that, I'm still getting the same. So if by any chance utaenda kwa code yako and you try and embed, and then when you try to click again, you are losing that event, just know that every time you do in a HTML, you embed, you lose the events that were there. So you have to recreate them afresh, like what we did here. So tuko sawa. So I'll hand it back to you, Ryan, and stop there. I'll share that video. So let me just stop recording.